veterinarians, we've heard all good and bad, but sometimes there's problems going on in a hospital. So the idea is you know, ethics is really important. Boy, if the whole world had better ethics, we wouldn't even have a recession. You know, this is just an important thing to never let go of your personal ethics. So the idea was that when veterinary students get out of school, sometimes they have a job that's really hard for them. For supposing they get shipped to England and have to deal with the horrible, you know, mad cow disease, and they have to put 2 million cattle down. And that just kind of shatters people. And veterinarians have a very high rate of suicide. I don't know if you know that, but it's the highest of all the professions. And I think a lot of it is because we do have to do lots of euthanasias and lots of ending the lives of animals. And in the shelters right now, we have that same problem. And that's why everybody's so interested in, you know, overpopulation and doing what we can to not overbreed. Okay? So that's just a quickie about why I did this, is really to spare a lot of mental and emotional and what we call moral stress. Okay? So if you see that you take this idea of the scale as being a tool, you can use it. And anybody can actually count from 0 to 10. The whole idea is that, you know, 0 means nothing, and 10 is the ideal and the best. And many people have intrinsic bioethical considerations, like, for instance, if some people here are vegan because they have a thing about animals, and other people are vegan because they just feel healthier with it. It's nothing to do with animals. So, but it's basically a decision that people make, and the dialogue that we have regarding creatures, great and small, worldwide, is something that all of us, you know, can engage in with this. It's just sort of a simple tool that I think is, you know, I'm launching it today, and I want you to all give me feedback. I mean, it's going to be a work in progress. But I thought that when you have an animal, whether or not it's yours or it's the world's animal, there are certain things we can monitor. And attachment is number one. You know, that makes your cat at home, your dog, your rabbit. Okay, Marcy, you still here? You got a rabbit. And Marcy was today at a hospital, right?
With senior housing.
A senior housing development with her rabbit, which is a pet partner. And that rabbit brings joy to elderly citizens. And, you know, that's a tremendous bond. Your rabbit is 12 years old now? Yeah, and let me tell you that this rabbit is highly appreciated. It's going to score 10s all the way across the top. The attachment is really something that is going to settle up this whole thing. On this side, are we attached to invasive insects? No. Are we attached to the animals that just ate our sheep outside? No. But we have responsibility for them, okay? And we have to do things by them. We have to be right by them. Devotion is another important criterion that I think that we look at. Supposing we have a horse, and we only get to ride that horse because we're so busy once a week. Well then, you know, that's not a lot of time that you've devoted to that horse. Maybe you should get someone else to ride it also during the week. You know, find somebody. So devotion is a big involved area, and you know, many people are devoted to their pets. They even dress them, and you know, they sleep right, like our dogs used to sleep on the bed, but when the pup got to be 120 pounds, I said, Ira, we're going to put them on the floor, and that's where they are, the foot of our bed at the floor. Value is something very interesting. It can be emotional value. In fact, the courts are fighting that right now. Is Christopher Green still here?
Oh, he just left.
He just had to leave, okay. He's a lawyer that I just met. Julie, I want you to get to know him really well. You know, there's a big controversy of how we value a pet. Are they an heirloom? Are they a thing? You know, how do we replace an animal that we love dearly? You know, what if we have loss of consortium with that? You know, there's a whole lot of things. The legal system is helping to figure that out. But right now, legally, animals are still going to be, by the court system, the value of replacing it. If you spent $10,000 on a medical bill, you'll get that back if that's what happens. If someone ran over your dog or viciously killed your dog because they're mad at you because you built a fence on their property. Most of the disputes are really between neighbors and animals. But the legal system is in that. But so value could be personal, but it can also be financial. If you have a $1 million racehorse, and someone just decided to let it out of the corral. So there's a lot of things going on about value, and it really reaches from personal to money, and we sometimes confuse it. And then concern. How concerned are we if we lose the blue-footed booby? We've never seen one in person, but as a world, we're very concerned about animals. And of course, we're all responsible. So the scale here has a bunch of blank lines, and at the end, I'm going to stop this talk in the middle, and at the end of the day, we're going to go ahead and get a consensus score for every situation here from this room, and then we'll come up and see what your group human-animal bond scale will be, okay? Because it's really kind of a personal thing, and you may score it yourself very differently. One person called me, in fact, Marcy, I think it was your sister, about what about someone's pet tarantula? And it's like, we have to take each individual thing. But the idea is that if you're highly attached to a cat or a dog or a horse, it's all going to be 10s in devotion, value, concern, and certainly responsibility, okay? So that'll be a score of 50 for the most highly valued pet. And it might be kind of difficult for you to put things in numbers. A lot of lay people don't want to scientifically do this, but it really helps you look at things. I developed a quality of life scale like this that went viral all over the world. I get letters every day from somebody that said, gee, Dr. Alice, in fact, I just got an email from the president of the International Association for Veterinary Pain Management. And he said, Alice, I had a client who was deaf, and I don't do the sign language, and the person couldn't hear me, and we had to decide what he's going to do with his 12-year-old golden retriever. He said, if it wasn't for your scale, we could not have gotten through that decision-making process. So I was tickled because of who he is, and he wanted to duplicate my scale for his textbook that he's writing about pain for the general public. But I get emails like that every day, and it's just so rewarding. And I know that maybe to you guys, to put a number to something is not your normal thing, but in the world of people trying to make evaluations, sometimes a score, like, oh, she's a 10, everyone kind of knows what we're talking about. Okay, I just have a basket of kittens here and there's 5 kitties in this basket, and you might not be able to see 5 kitties, but the Peter Zippy Fund has placed almost, or in fact over now, 14,000 animals. So I'm quite involved in helping to create human-animal bond relationships. Believe me, we know all the ins and outs and the sadnesses of overpopulation. So the terms attachment, everybody has to define their terms, right? That's what Voltaire said before there was a debate. Define your terms. So I'm giving definitions of attachment, and you may not agree with them, but we have to start from somewhere, and if anybody has input, let me know, okay? But I have attachment as referring to the degree of bonding which a person has with their animal. Okay, is that we have to be general because we want to be inclusive. Bonding, the human-animal bond. And actually the bond is glue. It's something that keeps that, it's a two-way thing. The animal is reliant on you, and you are often reliant on your animal. And that's an amazing relationship. Devotion refers to the amount of time, the effort, and the continuous ongoing interaction with the animal. There are some people that have animals, but they don't interact with them. And I think we all know who they are. There are people who have children that way, okay? Send them off to school, boarding school, and see you on Sunday, maybe. So devotion is something that is, again, very personal, but at times we just have to score it. And value, again, we've talked about that. It's going to be emotional value and financial and the intrinsic research development or ecologic importance of this animal. Because the blue-footed booby is really important to the world of people who are looking at nature. And now we're looking at so many other species that we haven't even begun to find out how many new species are in the deep ocean. But maybe they'll be really important to us, and they might hold some of these medical advances in the future. Concern refers to the worry that people have regarding the welfare of animals. I think we're all concerned that, you know, that we have to euthanize between 4 and 6 million cats and dogs every year in this country. When I got out of veterinary school, you know how many it was? 18 million. So we've made big progress, but it isn't perfect yet. And then we want to prevent suffering, and we want to do what we can to offset harm to animals, and especially in disaster work. You all heard about the Katrina problem. There was no real special conditions set aside for the human-animal bond. I mean, they took a puppy away from a little boy getting on a bus and just threw the puppy in the street and got the kid on the bus. The world saw that, and they had to stop putting that on TV because it was an insult to our sensibilities. And now almost every federal rescue program has something for the pets. Okay, people are not staying in their home anymore because the pet can't be rescued also. That's why a lot of people died in Katrina, because they didn't want to leave their animals. And of course, I wanted to say something else. I just got an email tonight by a very wise colleague who's a consultant, who said, the human-animal bond is often measured by our cultural beliefs. Like, we think every dog and cat should be spayed. But down in South America, you know, in Mexico and some of our areas in the city, and in Katrina area, it's not the social thing to do. People don't neuter their animals. But it doesn't mean the bond that they have with that animal is not a healthy and strong bond. It doesn't mean that that pet is not part of the family. And we tend, as a culture, to be arrogant at times, saying, oh, they don't care about their animal. It had heartworm, and it wasn't neutered. Well, that's not true. You can't put a label on love. It is what it is. It's an aesthetic quality. Okay? So we're learning a lot of these things about what concern is. And believe it or not, this is an animal in Peru. They're loved everywhere. This is a demonstration of a guard dog, you know, a police dog right outside of my clinic on our Peter Zippy day. A lot of children admire working dogs. And then, you know, responsibility is a tough one, okay? And I've tried to give it a definition referring to the direct liability of owners. Okay, we are liable for our dog if it bites somebody, for instance. And the indirect stewardship and respect that society owes all animals to the mainstream ecosystems, to public health, conservation, global sustainability, and this concept of One Health. Have you ever heard of that? The idea of One Health? Okay, One Health was real popular in the 60s when they thought that all cancer was caused by viruses and that all animals and people could get cancer. Well, it died off, but now it's back. And what it is, it's a multidisciplinary communication between physicians and, you know, of all healthcare areas, including social workers and counselors and you know, even rest home personnel and veterinarians, of course. But the idea is that we are all sharing one health because we have the same earth. We all have to, you know, raise our food in the same soil, drink water from the same water sources, and we have to, you know, live in this atmosphere that we're creating. And so the concept of One Health is becoming, it's in a groundswell right now. It's huge. And I'm involved in a dialogue with all the different types of physicians and healthcare workers in the United States called the National Academies of Practice, and we advise Congress on things. I don't know if they listen to us, but the fact is we do make white papers and consensus papers, and we're actually talking about the aging of America in the next several years and how it's going to affect the healthcare system. But the idea of One Health is just huge when you think about, you know, a runaway bacteria in an ocean, or you know, the algae, and how it can affect the fish, and how it can affect the people, and things like that. So it's a pretty amazing thing. So when we talk about animals, we're talking about where they live, how can they eat properly without being, you know, having toxic refuse to eat on, and water conservation. It's huge, huge. And this is, I don't know if you can see that, but there's rays under there, and that's in South America. So the generalized range for scores, the idea of the universal human-animal bond scale, it's generalized. It's meant to be flexible for your particular opinion, okay? The score is provided at the top of each box, are just mine. I mean, I'm just like you. I have not gone out into the world to see and prove that the score I put up here is what it is. But there are, if you can just say 10 levels of attachment, you know, if you just divide attachment as 100%, you can always fraction it. And all these other things are just numbers that I'm giving arbitrary for me. But I want you to think of your own score and see what you come up with and see if you see the world differently. And the big problem is that we have people all over the planet that are walking around like this or like this. They don't see the world that really is, and so they're sometimes advocating for something that's absolutely foolish because they're walking around blind. They don't see what it is, what happens to be reality. Many people work from misinformation, or they have incorrect assumptions. And so that's what this is for the veterinary student and for the person who loves animals to just understand when you read something or see something, you know that this is reality as it is. And how can we make changes from different cultures? And you go from one country to the next. How many here feel like they're world travelers? That you know what's going on in a different world. I mean, it's amazing when you go from one place to the next how animals are regarded. It can be quite shocking. So the diversity, you know, among, I think in this country we have incredible diversity. But when you look at the world, the United States is a very small country. You know, there's only one of us. In fact, the last time I saw Val, we were in Paris at the World Veterinary Cancer Congress. And I was the only American in this huge table of specialists that were representing their countries. I was shocked. I thought there would be 10 Americans, and certainly someone other than me. But it was amazing to see how little our country is when you see how many other nations there are, and they all want to have their viewpoints expressed, okay? So the idea is that we're going to have to report things in ranges. There's no way you have an exact score, but if you have a range, that's great. And these are the boobies flying around. And if you don't know this, that movie that Alfred Hitchcock did, Birds, they were blue-footed boobies. Okay, and there's one last thing that we're going to walk away with, and that's your own normative ethics. And what is that? Okay, well, it's what you feel in your own heart and soul works for you. Okay, Teresa has reasons that she, you know, eats what she eats, and it works for her. Okay, and she would walk around, you know, and maybe someone would come and have a different opinion that would just be an insult to her personal feelings about something, and for you, Anna. But the fact is that everybody walks around with their own normative ethics. If I met so many veterinarians when I was in veterinary school that grew up hunting with their father and their mother, and that is something they treasure, and that's their social background. And you know, we often enough, you know, like, you know, don't agree with it, but the fact is it is what it is. Many religions have completely different viewpoints about the same thing. We have social problems right now in our country because of different viewpoints. So the idea is that you carry your own normative ethics and you have to respect others for what they have. And that's the real important thing, is that we should always have a courteous dialogue about what we care about, and the fact is that we should be respected. And there should be no violence whatsoever against someone's opinion, because we respect, you know, you want to respect everybody's opinions. And so the idea, as I mentioned to you, is just to visualize reality as it is. What is reality? It's, you know, the idea is that we may face something tough. Veterinarians have to be shipped all over the place, and they sometimes just go like, oh my God. I had a young veterinarian working for me from Ireland, and the minute she left us, she had to go right into mad cow disease, and you know, it was amazing what she had to face. And this is a stray dog in Turkey. A lot of places don't collect their stray dogs, they just throw food at them, and you can tell this guy's really sick, because he looks like he's starving to death and he's not eating his food. And you know, when you walk around different countries and you see stuff, it's just, it breaks your heart. It absolutely breaks your heart. So the world as it is, and that we want to do the right thing based upon our normative ethics, our correct principles of good and bad and right and wrong, and justice and injustice. And a commitment to the One Health, you know, world of the concept obligates a dialogue between the stakeholders, and I use that word tonight because everybody uses that word right now, despite polarization. And I actually had to take a class in managing polarity because of the Ethics Society. It is an amazing thing when you're talking to wonderful people who have opinions on both sides of the field. It's absolutely stunning, and it's very educational. You know, the world can be very cruel for animals. This is just a bird that was chewing up a rat in South America, and this is a little baby seal starving because his mother's dead, and this is a dog with cancer. I see cancer patients. That's my area of expertise, and so I've seen nature's cruelty from veterinary school, and it's as we know, we've all lost relatives with cancer. We've all had natural disasters and things like that. We all have to build fences and mend fences, and the most important thing for all of us to do is search for the correct behavior that is correct for us. And so I think I'll end with this, and that's our puppy. That puppy grew to 120 pounds, but they were on the bed. Okay, and this is a patient that had liver failure from cancer and lived 4 years. And we'll create our own scale after the next part of the program. Thank you very much.
Way to go. Wow. Nice. Isn't she amazing? I told you want to hear her speak. Okay. Thank you, Alice. We will bring you back up in just a couple minutes. Here, let me fix you like I always do.
My label.
Okay, so we are going to now just watch the last couple segments of this movie. It ends on a high note, I promise you. And then we're going to come back and think about what you would score this, because we're going to have to climb through getting the score consensus up on this board pretty quickly in order to meet our 10 o'clock stop time. So we'll play these last couple segments. Stick around, because then we're going to come back and have Alice back up here again to close us out. Okay? So enjoy.